Thank you for taking time and inviting us to visit today. Can you take us back to January when you first received the patient samples of this unknown pneumonia? What were you told?
非常高兴，就是你来采访我。
I'm glad that you came to interview me for some related information.
我们研究所呢是
In fact, it was on December 30th, 2019 that our institute received the coronavirus samples from patients with pneumonia of unknown cause sent from Wuhan Jinjutan Hospital. At that time, we were not told much information about the samples. After receiving the samples, we immediately worked in parallel with some other domestic institutions to carry out work, such as the identification and detection of the pathogens. In a very short period, we completed the identification, sequence analysis, and isolation of the pathogen. And on January 12th, as one of the institutions designated by the National Health Commission, we shared the genome sequence of the virus with the World Health Organization. And we also shared the information to GISAID, the global initiative on sharing all influenza data. I think the release of such information laid the foundation for the development of detection techniques and the vaccine design, and also won time for the world to combat the pandemic.
Until now, a prominent theory has been that the virus made the leap from animal to human at the market, at the Huanan market. Did you analyze samples from the market? And what animal samples were taken from what animals?
So far, there's no evidence to show that the novel coronavirus jumped from animals to people in Huanan seafood market in Wuhan. In the early stage of the pandemic, several domestic teams went to Huanan seafood market to collect some samples. The Xu Zhongli team of our institute and Huazhong Agricultural University went to the market together to collect some environmental samples and frozen food samples. We detected the nucleic acids of the novel coronavirus in some environmental samples, including the door handles, the ground, and sewage. But the nucleic acid of the coronavirus was not detected in the frozen food. Regarding your other question, I don't have much knowledge about them.
Was there any sampling of live animals?
We haven't. We haven't. As other, as we talked about today, other live animals, but we haven't this kind of sample. So we can tell you more information about this kind of things.
So you didn't analyze them, or there were no samples taken from live animals?
No, we haven't. We haven't taken any live animal samples from Huanan.
So when you went to Huanan, all of the animals were gone?
When we went, 就是当我们去的时候啊，已经是华南海鲜市场已经封闭了。
When we went to the seafood market, the market was already closed, so we did not get any live animal samples from there.
What is your theory on how the virus was able to reach Wuhan, presumably from a cave, perhaps 1,000 miles from here? You and your lab, your scientists, you have had more time than most other scientists on Earth to be able to look at the data, to study samples, to come up with a theory on how things have come to this.
其实我和你一样，也和其他人一样，都想知道。
Actually, like you and everyone else, I also want to know how the virus entered Huanan seafood market or Wuhan. Up to now, there is no clear answer. In fact, there are many possibilities. The virus may be transmitted to Wuhan through infected animals or humans, or it may enter the city through the contaminated frozen food transported through the cold chain. There has not been a clear answer so far, but I think what's clear is that this virus couldn't have been leaked from the research institute or the laboratory. There are also many theories at the moment. It is a consensus among the international academic community that the virus has a natural origin. Many scientists have published articles in some well-known international journals. They believe that the coronavirus, like some other emerging viruses, comes from nature.
和其他的一些新发病毒一样。
We also hope that we can find the origin of this virus with the joint efforts and collaboration of scientists around the world. But we have no idea what the virus is like, how it jumped from the natural or intermediate host to humans in the early stages, from what animal,
自然宿主，或者
and
是
when
中
and
间
how
宿
the
主
spillover
传
happened.
播到人，是什么动物，发生在什
That
么
is
时
why we
间，
need the joint
是以
efforts
什
of
么样的方
scientists
式，
from all over the
我们都
world
不清楚。这也是为什么我们需要全球
to
科学
answer
家
this
共同努
question
力
with scientific
来
data
用科学
and
的数据和
evidence.
证据去回答这个问题。
It's been stated that there's never been a virus like SARS-CoV-2 before, but your lab was studying a similar virus, RATG13. Can you explain the link and how it is that most people are to believe that this isn't somehow a smoking gun?
对，我要告诉你的是啊，就是我们武汉病毒研究所啊，我们自是做
What I want to tell you is that Wuhan Institute of Virology only did the sequencing and comparative analysis of RA4991 and RATG13.
RATG。
We have not obtained a live RATG13 virus, so it is impossible for us to operate on this virus.
这个病毒，活的病毒，所以更无从谈起这个病毒的操作。
So what I want to explain here is that RA4991 and RATG13 actually represent the gene sequence of the same
是
virus.
同一种病毒的基因序列。那么
In the
早
early
期的
days,
时候用的是
RA4991 was
RA4991
used,
它是简单的
which
演绎
adopted
了
the
我们
old
发
rule
现
of
一段
indicating
序
the
列
idea
的
of a
这
sequence
个
sample.
样品的
And
编
then
号
we renamed it
那
to
后来我们把它
RATG13 to indicate the time and location where the sequence sample was found.
13以去表明这个序列
In
它
fact,
采样
TG
的样
means
品的
Tongguan
地点
Town,
和时
and
间。
13 means
其实
that the
TG
sampling was
就是
done in
代表通
2013.
关镇，而13
It is
是代
known
表这
to
个
us
采样
all
的时
that there
间
was a 96.2% match
那这
between the
由于
genome
我
of
们
the
大家知道
coronavirus and
这
that
个
of
新冠病毒的因子
RATG13.
和 RATG13 。
In fact,
在
there is a difference of 3.8%,
是%，
which corresponds to
1,100
1,100 amino acid positions.
差异。
It is not amino acid. It should be, corresponding to 1,100 nucleotide
对应的
positions.
核苷酸呢是1100个核苷酸。
It will take a long time for the virus to naturally evolve and accumulate the amount of change through genetic
通过遗传突变的
mutation.
方式来累积到这样一个数。
Therefore, RATG13 is not the direct source of the novel coronavirus.
它不是新冠病毒的直接来源。
Can you clarify for me, was RATG13, can you clarify, was it found in a mine where people had died of a COVID-like illness?
No,
It's not the same.
no, not the same.
Your lab is known for handling some of the most dangerous pathogens on the planet. There is a theory that somehow the pandemic is linked to a leak from this lab. Is there any possibility?
No possibility. 这项我已经告诉你了。我们建设高等级生物
I've already told you about this.
就是为了
The purpose for us to build a high-level biosafety laboratory is to protect our laboratory staff from being infected by the viruses we operate
也来
on,
保障我们所操作的病原
and to ensure that these viruses will not be released into the
生物
environment.
安保是高等级生物安全
Biosafety and biosecurity are the core goals of the high-level biosafety laboratory.
靠的生物安全的设施设备之外，
Therefore, in addition to reliable biosafety facilities and equipment,
还有一支职业化的
we also need a strict management system and a professional team of scientific research support and maintenance to ensure the safe
那我们这
operation
个
of the
实验
laboratory.
按照国家卫生主管部门的批复，我们现在
Approved by the National Health Authority, our laboratory now can handle the cell-level operations on Ebola virus, Nipah virus, Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever virus, and on the infection operation of Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever virus on
出
rodents.
现之后，我们也获得了
After the
新冠
emergence of
病毒的
coronavirus,
细胞水平。
we also had the approval of conducting the cell-level operation on the coronavirus
因为我反复
and the
强调
infection
我们
operation
是在
on the non-human
去年
primates.
的12月30号
Because I have repeatedly emphasized that it was on December 30th that we got contact with the samples of SARS-like pneumonia,
非
or pneumonia of unknown cause sent from the hospital, we have not encountered the novel coronavirus before that, and without this virus, there was no way that it is leaked from the lab.
With what you know now, has anyone at the lab, either personnel or connected to the lab, a third-party contractor, tested positive for this virus?
No,
Nobody.
nobody. So in our lab,
Excuse me, I keep responding in English.
没有。
No, let me say it
我再
again.
我再说一下，
I want to reinstate that according to the management regulations of our lab,
会对我们实验
we
室
will conduct regular health checks
定期的
and evaluation on the staff in our
在
laboratory.
历次的检查当中，没有从我们的工作人
In
员
our checks, we did not detect the nucleic acid of the coronavirus from our staff, nor did we detect the
所以
antibodies.
实验室长期以来
So the laboratory has been operating safely for a long
仅仅是
time.
我们实验室没有感染。
Not only is there zero infection in our lab, the whole institution also didn't have anybody infected with the virus.
The U.S. recently released a diplomatic cable based on a visit by two diplomats here with scientific background in January of 2018. In that cable, they cited concerns about safety and the potential for an accident at the lab. What would prompt something like that?
就是美国驻华官员呢，在2018年的3月份，
The U.S. officials in China visited the Wuhan Institute of Virology in March 2018,
发出的时间是2018年的1月份。
but I noticed reports from the internet that the cable was released in January 2018,
是基于怎样的
which was
信息
actually earlier
研究
than
判
the
断，
time they paid the
是
visit.
出于什么样的目的和意义？
But what I'm not so clear about, what is the basis of their research and judgment? What are their purposes and meaning of releasing this cable?
那在会后啊，我也
I did not attend this meeting as I was preoccupied with
在
other things that day.
并没有参观过任何
After the meeting, I learned that they did not visit any laboratories during their stay in
实验室
Wuhan,
的生物安全管理和标准问题。
nor did they discuss the biosafety management and standards of the laboratory at the meeting.
建设历程。
At the meeting, they exchanged more about the construction process of the P4 laboratory,
中美关于传染病的这个
cooperation projects with the EcoHealth Alliance in the U.S.,
研讨会的情况，
and the China-U.S. seminar
而
on the
且在会上
ecology and
美
evolution
方
of
对
infectious
中国建
diseases.
立高等级生物安全实验室。
Moreover, the U.S. side gave credit to China's establishment for high-level biosafety laboratory and researches on the early warning and forecast of
在公共
pathogens,
卫生领域啊，加强合作。
and they expressed their hope that the two sides will strengthen cooperation in the field of public health in the future.
人员的安全。
As what I told you, the core goal of the laboratory is to protect the safety of personnel and the environment.
设施设备，严格
The
的
reliable
管理体系
facilities and equipment, the strict management system, and professional talent team that we have built are to ensure the biosafety and biosecurity of the lab.
实际上，为此，联合国世界卫生组织
In fact, for this reason, the United Nations, World Health Organization, the CDC, and NIH in the U.S., and the governments around the world have all formulated a series of laboratory biosafety requirements and mandatory
同
regulations.
时，我们国家还建立
Our country has also issued some related regulations and technical standards.
认可体系和
At the same time, our country has also established a strict laboratory accreditation system and approval procedure for approving the experimental
和
activities
国家
of
的卫
labs.
生主管部门每年
For many
都要对
years,
实验室
China's technology and health authorities have done annual reviews on the operating status of the facilities and equipment in the laboratories, the laboratory's management system documents, and our personnel
和实验
capabilities.
室一起来
The Institute and the lab will also do regular and irregular inspections and assessments to ensure all our scientific research projects, experimental activities, personnel, laboratory animals, waste disposal, and safety and security are all properly managed.
得到落实。最终的目
The
的
ultimate goal is to ensure a safe laboratory and the safe and efficient operation of the laboratory, and make this lab a platform to support prevention and control of infectious
当
diseases.
中的一些平台支撑作用。
So you're saying this visit by the diplomats in January of 2018 didn't happen?
当然，我刚才已经说了，他们
Like
在
I
3月
said, the diplomats paid the visit in March, but the cable was released in
电报发
January.
出的时间是1月份。
So in January 2018, there were no US diplomats who visited this lab.
你再说一遍，
Yes, I'm translating now.
你把他的话你再翻译一遍，我再确认一下。
In January of 2018, you were saying no U.S. officials visited Wuhan Institute of Virology?
是 ，No，there is no mark， 好吧，还是用中文吧，没有，他们在1月份并没有。
They didn't visit Wuhan Institute of Virology in January. Their visit was in March 2018.
2018年的3月份。
So a January 2018 diplomatic cable about a US visit to the lab is fake?
我已经说了，我是从网上知道的。
Like I said, I read on the internet that this cable was released in January.
但我不知道
I don't really know what their research and judgment was based on, and what information was in the cable, and of what purpose and meaning.
我不太清楚。
So much of the political discussion over the lab and the controversy that surrounds the lab is being tied to this diplomatic cable that US diplomats had stated explicitly that they had concerns about this lab and the potential for an accident at this lab.
So that is why I'm also confused with the information.
Because the visit didn't happen.
It visit. No, 他们到武汉病毒研究所参
They
观了
visited
并没有
Wuhan
参
Institute
观
of
任何
Virology,
实验室
but they did not visit any labs, nor did they discuss about the biosafety management and standards of any laboratory.
So they visited the institute. They did not visit that lab. So they would have no premise to make any sort of assessment on the safety or the potential for an accident.
No,
And that visit happened in March,
that's right.
not January.
That's right. This is why I'm confused by the cable. I don't know what information they get, what assessment they have done to have this cable, and what they want to express it, their meaning, and what is their intention. I don't understand.
The Institute had been receiving funding from the US through EcoHealth Alliance. That funding has been cut. What were you told at the time?
NIH 终止了双方的
NIH terminated the funding for our scientific and technological cooperative projects.
不理解。
We don't understand it and really regret the decision.
至于说
As for the reason you talked about, we did not get the explanation for why the funding was terminated for this
经
project.
费资助的原因，其实我觉得
In fact, I think if you asked the US side, you might get a better answer.
更好的一个回应。
In my opinion, this project is to pull some scientists around the world to carry out researches on the traits, risk assessment, and early warning and prediction of some emerging viruses to continuously strengthen our understanding of some unknown etiologies and our assessment on the risk of their transmission,
我们对一些未知病原的理解，
which can advance our research on therapeutic drug and vaccines and provide some technical support for potential future coronavirus infections.
为未来可能的冠状病毒的
It is a forward-looking scientific research
一
layout.
些技术支撑，是一种前瞻
As
性
for the reasons you are talking about,
所以至于你所谈到的什么原因，
I think you can ask the U.S.
我们去
policymakers.
问问美方的决策者。
How has all of the attention impacted the work being done at the Institute here? Because this is not purely a scientific search anymore. It's a very politicized debate.
其实面对这种无中生有的猜测，
In fact, in the face of such speculations and rumors,
重伤，
or even malicious slander, it is difficult for anyone to remain indifferent and calm.
但是我们的科研人员还是
However, our scientific researchers have overcome all kinds of pressures from the epidemic and rumors, overcome numerous difficulties, and fully devoted themselves to battling the pandemic through science.
在我们第一次接到
After the first time we received samples of pneumonia of unknown cause, we organized personnel and other scientists across the country to complete the virus identification, sequence analysis, and isolation
在我
in
们
a
完
short
成病
period
毒
of
的分离
time.
之后，快
After
速
we
地从
completed the isolation of the virus, we quickly organized a team to carry out the screening of antiviral drugs and the establishment of animal models and the research of
技
vaccines.
术、人才和资源的优势，
At the same time, we also took advantage of our technology, talents, and resources to help scientific research teams across the country carry out applied pathological anatomy analysis of the convalescent plasma, research on disinfectants, and an environmental risk assessment, which strongly supports the science-based battle against the pandemic nationwide. Some of our research results have been published as research papers, and some technologies have been applied in practice. I believe these not only contributed to China's fight against the epidemic, but also to the world's fight against the pandemic. We made our contributions and provided our technology and methods. Actually, when I was asked this question just now, I think that in the face of an emergency infectious disease, the public will feel afraid and helpless. Therefore, in history, an emergency infectious disease is often accompanied by rumors that the virus was leaked by the laboratory. But as the general public understands more about the laboratory and gains more information, such rumors will disappear. However, some officials in the U.S. government, without any evidence, went against the consensus of the scientific and technological community, claiming that the virus came from the laboratory. They highly believe that the virus came from the laboratory and said there was sufficient evidence to prove it. But in fact, we have not seen any evidence up to now. Actually, such irresponsible remarks by U.S. government officials have had great impact on society and caused serious damage. As I said, it actually affects people's trust in scientists, science, and scientific research institutes. It disturbs our science-based anti-pandemic work, and even makes people misunderstand some pioneering scientific researches. What's worse is weakened our determination and confidence in fighting the pandemic. Not only does it affect our current anti-epidemic cooperation, but also impact the construction of a global public health and safety system in the future. What I want to tell people is that the cunning virus is the real enemy of the U.S. and the world. Only when we unite and cooperate to defeat the enemy can people return to normal production and life, and share the world peace and prosperity. When we are facing the pandemic together and the virus continues to spread, we should trust and rely on science and fight the pandemic together through global cooperation. Of course, through this event, we are also reflecting that our research institute and P4 laboratory should have more communication and exchanges with the general public in the future to continue to promote our scientific ideas and our science and technology so we can improve the scientific literacy of the citizens and promote the development of science and technology together with them.
As a scientist, what is your opinion of how the U.S. is managing the pandemic?
This is a tough question.
The sudden outbreak of COVID-19 has brought great harm to the lives and health of people around the world. Facing different situations and environments when fighting the pandemic, different countries will adopt some prevention strategies and measures that suit their own national conditions. Then these strategies and measures will provide valuable experience and terrible lessons for the pandemic prevention and control worldwide. Recently, I have noticed that the numbers of infections and death in the U.S. are increasing and the pandemic has not been effectively controlled. Like all Americans, I hope that the pandemic in the U.S. can be effectively contained, the economy can be restarted, and people can really return to normal production and life. Because only when the U.S. can effectively contain the virus, the whole world can restore their confidence and resolution in combating the virus.
It seems every lab in the world is now focused on this virus, vaccines, therapeutic drugs. Where are you at with the vaccine that you're developing?
你刚才所谈到的疫苗可能是
The vaccine you just mentioned should be the inactivated vaccine jointly developed by Wuhan Institute of Virology and Wuhan Institute of Biological Products of China National Pharmaceutical Group.
这个候选的灭活疫苗啊。
On April 12th, the candidate inactivated vaccine was approved in our clinical phase 1 and phase 2 trials.
进入临床的灭活。
This is also the world's first inactivated virus vaccine entering the clinic trial.
临床的接盲结果。
Then the unbinding results of phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trials on June 16th showed that the vaccine was very safe.
这种不良反应。
There was no such adverse reaction among all the recipients of the vaccine, and the antibody-positive conversion rate reached 100%.
在阿联酋。
On June 23rd, we already started phase 3 clinical trial in the UAE. In fact, we and our partner have made some preparations for the vaccine's production.
一旦3期临床的结果
Once the result of phase 3 clinical trials comes out, we will immediately put the vaccine into production after we complete the evaluation and get the approval from the government.
取得很好的结
We
果。
hope that phase 3 clinical trials can achieve good results, and then our vaccine can truly become a global public health product to serve the
服
world.
务全球。
Thank you.
There is such intense tension between the US and China over the pandemic, and questions about the lab seem to be a part of that. Do you think there will always be suspicion of your lab, and how comfortable are you with that?
其实作为一个科学家，
As scientists, we don't want to see the tension between China and the US because it is not good for the
因为
scientific
中美
development.
关系的紧张，不利于科学的发展、
It is not good for the progress and stability of the world.
共同进步和
I
稳
believe
定。
that if the virus is not contained, the rumors that the virus was leaked from the Wuhan Institute of Virology will persist.
疫情一天得不到控制，这种有关病毒
But eventually, people will understand that the Institute and our P4 laboratory are biosafety platforms operating safely and
别人会知
reliably.
道，武汉病毒研究所和我们的 P4 实验室就是
They
一
will
个
provide more technology support and methods for the prevention and control of future infectious
受害者
diseases.
平台它的存在将会为未来传染病的
They
预
will
防
be the
控制
guardian angels of people and work jointly to safeguard the global public health and
作为
safety.
人民的守护神，共同维护全球公共卫生安全。
Is there anything else you think is important to add for America to understand, coming from a scientist in Wuhan, China, where this pandemic first emerged?
其实我有很多美国的合作伙伴，
In
我
fact,
长期以来跟
I have
他们保持
cooperated with
良
many
好的
U.S.
关系
counterparts,
我
and
们
I
在
have
很多方
maintained a
面
good
从科学上
cooperation
从美国
relationship
科学
with
家
them
身
for a
上
long
知道
time.
很多的
We have
一些
learned a lot
科
from
学
the
技术
American
啊科学
scientists in
精
terms
神
of
啊
their
相关
scientific
的一些经
technology,
验方面。
spirit,
在这一次
and
的疫
relevant
情当中，
experience.
我觉得我们还是要
During
相信
this
科学，
pandemic, I think we still
尊重
need to
科学，
believe in science,
相信科学家，
respect science,
听
and
从专
trust
家
the
的建议
scientists,
来做好
and
我们的
follow
一
the
些防
advice
疫
of
的一些
experts
基
to
本的
take some
要求
basic
包括
protective
戴口
measures,
罩、保持社交距离，
including wearing
避免
masks,
聚集
maintaining social
等等的一些
distancing,
工作
and avoiding
其实很多
gatherings.
国家在这一次的疫情的
In
防控
fact,
当中
many countries have
积累了很
accumulated
好
good
的经验。
experience in the
我
prevention
觉
and
得
control
美
of
国
this
可以
pandemic.
去更
I
好
think the
地
U.S. can learn more good
了解
experiences from some
一些
countries
成
that
功
have successfully
防控
prevented
这
and
些
controlled the
疫情的一些国
pandemic.
家一些好的经验，
Then the U.S. can apply these
然后在美国
experiences in
得
its
到
own
很
country,
好的应用。
because I emphasize
因为
once again
我再次强调，
that a good control of the
美国控制
pandemic in
和
the
疫情
U.S.
将会
will
极
greatly
大地提
enhance
高
the global
全球
determination
抗击疫
and
情
competence in
决心
fighting the
和信心。
epidemic.